another video blog, vlog, whatever you want to call it. Didn't have a very good night, that's for sure. Still got the tooth problem. I need tomorrow. I'll be able to ring somebody and get something done. I think the whole tooth needs to be taken out. It's killing me. It's fucking not good. Toothache isn't a very good thing to deal with for anyone. So I had somebody blog on exploratoryminds.com about consciousness, which is one of my favourite subjects. I think a lot of people's favourite subjects once they start thinking about it, because there's so many unanswered questions. Is consciousness really a product of the human brain? People will say, well, of course. Well, there's no actual proof of that. There is evidence of what parts of the brain create the experience of, your touch, your taste, what you're seeing, visual cortex, and things like that, right? Your creative aspects and things. But that's not consciousness. Those are the parts of the brain that process different types of information and are different parts specific for that specific type of task, for that specific type of information, right? I think there's a fundamental flaw in people's attempt to understand consciousness, and they think of experience as consciousness. No, you wouldn't. That's the content. Without consciousness, you got content and you got no experience. Right? So, whatever consciousness is, I think it's silly to call it an illusion. Other people would say it's an illusion somehow. It's pretty real for the conscious observer. It's not illusionary. Again, experience that is delivered to consciousness can be illusionary, like optical illusions, illusionary, right? They said they're going to expand their article a bit. We might put that actually. We'll see what they got and put it on our main blog. What we do is just ask, do you want this posted on our main blog? If so, we give it a shout out. Because this is one of those things that it's neither right or wrong or neither here or there. I personally feel like consciousness could be something akin to that the biological system receives or is tuned into. Meaning that it wouldn't be necessarily biologically physical, it could be a field or something like that, or perhaps it is generated by it. That's a very esoteric, out there kind of view for some people. There's no scientific evidence of that. Not necessarily quantifiable or measurable, so how can science discover that? Although I think it will. I mean, people who are very science-minded and very intelligent talk in terms of, if it's not quantifiable or measurable, then they think, it must be created by the brain, like consciousness created by the brain, because this is the material that is quantifiable and measurable, the brain. Therefore, there's a lot of bias out there And I think, particularly very intelligent people who have been involved themselves with thought processes a lot, and mind games, thought games, if you will, thought experiments. They get so close to all of the involvement with their own thoughts and creating thoughts, they think they are that content. They think they are the thoughts. My metaphor would be consciousness being like the child playing with Lego bricks. And let's say the child builds up a house or a spaceship or a little man or whatever. All that is ideas built and played with by consciousness. And there's also a thing of thoughts arrive into the consciousness before they're almost complete, before we're even aware of them as well. It's something that happens to consciousness. I need to clarify that. I'm trying to clarify this point because I see a lot of literature out there confusing. Not whole literature. I haven't read loads of stuff on this, but there's terminologies out there that then paragraphs, little things I might have read here and there that confuse the content of people's mind as the identity, as conscious. The content is what the consciousness experiences. Thoughts happen to you. Consciousness plays with that thought, pulls it apart, perhaps, and rearranges to create a new thought. Just like the child with the Lego house, create a new house, or rearrange the house to something entirely different. A spaceship is very different to a house. You get Lego sets now with space rockets and all this and different things for children. And I think it's a good metaphor. Who are you? You're not the content of your mind, but that gives you the experience of your character. Even your character is something you build as ideas, and your experience of life influences you because it's in your memory, and memory is not really that clear cut either. But regardless, you consciously have a history. You remember things from your childhood and your current experience and your interactions. It builds the character. The character is built in this brain. The character we think of ourselves to be and experience ourselves as being. There's no escaping that. It happens. It's something that happens to us, but it's something that happens to consciousness. It's not consciousness. It's something that consciousness experiences. You are not the content. And a lot of people think, they can't separate those two. They think can't see why they would be separate either, because they equate the brain as generating consciousness. But what is it? What is consciousness? Well, if you're going to say, it's all your memories, blah, blah, blah. No. Again, if I'm getting the point across, really trying to ram this one home. Those are the things that you're consciously aware of. If you was to use a telephone in order to communicate with somebody, and that was your only means of communication, you couldn't do a video, communicate like this. You couldn't use yourself talking for some reason, let's just say in a fictional scenario, you can't communicate unless you have a phone. You might be forgiven for thinking that you are the phone. Yeah. I know that's a bit far out. Well, the phone is part of you. And I think it's the same with consciousness using the brain, whatever it is. We use this and experience it, and we experience our life and everything else via conscious awareness and via the processing that the brain has of this information coming into it. That is, once it's done all this processing at any level, it's another levels up beyond consciousness as well. Consciousness seems to be like an aperture. We don't consciously perceive everything that's going on with our bodies and the experience because we don't need to. It's adaptive in that way. That could be a good argument why people think that yes, it is done by the brain, because it matches evolutionary need and the needs and the things that we don't need. We don't need to be consciously aware, for instance, of just breathing until I said it. You didn't know you was breathing. But now you're consciously aware of breathing. You can hold a breath if you want to. But so many other things are not consciously aware of what your immune system is doing right now and all this. Not important for the survival, but of the biological system to be aware of that, not necessarily. But I think one day with things like, providing we don't destroy ourselves, things like Neuralink, which will develop a chip to be plugged into the brain for extra mental abilities. We could choose to be aware of certain things that we'd never really been able to be aware of before. We choose to be aware somehow of data feedback and be a learning process of what the data means of what is your immune system doing right now. Perhaps, don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things. Because these chips could be measuring like blood flow and contents of the blood as well as brain activity, and get all that information available on demand as and when it might be chosen to be needed by the consciousness. We have a lot of automation that influences our conscious decisions, I think, as well. But we can decide not to take action on certain things the more aware we are on certain things. But sometimes we don't. We just go ahead and do something, and your desire to do something is from a whole chain of other things happen before you was even aware consciously of all that going on. Am I making sense? I know this is far out. However, this write-up was talking about one of my users at exploratoryminds.com. If consciousness can be proven to be a creation, a emergent side effect of all the configuration of a human brain and its information, then the idea of uploading to a new unit could really, really transcend our limitations of interstellar travel. If there's limitations on the speed of light, I guess, but maybe one day there'll be a way around that. But let's say we now have in a future scenario that somehow we manage to succeed with a colony on Mars, some kind of biodome or whatever, all under one self-sustained roof. And somebody wants to go to Mars, and technology at the time is, right, I come out of this body and I'm going to be transmitted to the body on Mars. And the body on Mars is an upgrade that is adapted for many differences in Martian atmosphere, Martian environment, and so on. And are you still you? Once you transmitted, well, you're an upgraded you. Assuming that all that information, once it's arranged and plugged into a system, and of course the new system would have to have the efficiencies as well as the deficiencies, but still be an upgrade, because you're upgraded for the adaptation of Martian environment there. And just thought experiment. So if all the configuration is what's causing consciousness, it still doesn't explain how consciousness emerges or what it is. I think it's a cop-out. But then people think it's a cop-out to say, consciousness is a universal field that biological systems can be tuned to or experience as a local. The illusion then would be a localization of your individuality. If it's a field, then your information of experience of you is being fed back to this field. If you think of it in frequency, some kind of range of frequencies collaborate together. I mean, this sounds like a lot of garbage to some people, and I agree. In some ways, it's a thought experiment. But it's little wonder now that even by today's standard, we've discovered things about the brain that we would never hope to just 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. Now we know what is responsible for many different things, but still we haven't found who is the pilot, who's driving this, and who's consciously aware. Of course, you can become unconscious. Well, when you become unconscious, it's because for whatever reason, there'll be no information towards the container that is consciousness. There's no experience there. I don't know if you've ever fainted. I have. And you're not aware it's happened until you open your eyes again and someone's going, "You okay?" You remember, I feel faint. If you remember feeling dizzy, then there's nothing. You think there must have been something in between that, and then you open your eyes again. It's like watching a film where they've cut the piece of film because the two bits of the frame. Someone's sat here and immediately in a different position over here. You know, it's like you don't even experience the missing time. You just experience a jump, a edit, a frame cut, because that information was not being processed, delivered to consciousness. Therefore, consciousness wasn't experiencing whatever it is, whatever it would have been. Or whatever was going on wasn't a configuration that consciousness could perceive. There's that argument as well. And I'm going along this thought process a lot with the idea that consciousness isn't generated by the brain. I feel like this it's almost an intuitive thing, but at the same time, could it be just wishful thinking that if consciousness is something outside of the biological system, then that maybe that's just fantastical fantasizing of immortality, that you're always going to experience something. I don't think, you know, people could put that argument forward, but I don't, that's not why I'm coming up with it, really, but I think some people might because of that. And, it is quite a concept, really, to think of if science really does discover what consciousness is. I think they would be able at some point, if they could really discover exactly and make it quantifiable, measurable, what happens to allow this emergent phenomena called consciousness to exist. And they could theorize how to bring artificial intelligence to true self-aware of the intelligence that it is. Self-awareness. And many have argued like it is because of a certain pattern of configuration and other things, many variables, that it's the configuration that somehow gives an emergent. Again, it doesn't say why or how. It's just theory that is somehow creating it. Every argument I've heard out there, what is consciousness, is must be generated by the brain because of blah blah. It doesn't explain consciousness at all. Nobody knows what it is. But I think, for me, it seems highly likely when you going down this thought process that's separate, because if you've ever meditated in a particular type of way, then one type of meditation would be you just allow your thoughts to go. You don't try to blank your mind. That is actually impossible. More harder for some people than it is others, but 100% you can't do it. You can't blank your mind. There's always going to be something going on there. Have a detached awareness, experience, your consciousness. You are consciousness. Experiencing what's going on in your brain. Maintain the awareness via the meditation of what's going on in your mind, in your brain, and don't become involved in those thoughts. Don't even bother to start thinking, but allow the content to flow. If you try to stop thinking, that's a thought about not thinking. So it's a thought on its own. You can't blank your mind, because what is nothing? Well, doesn't exist in the human experience. And if it did, it'd be like that frame that was cut out. Yeah, from the video, like I said, he sat here and then suddenly he's somewhere else. Nothing would be, oh, consciousness can't process that, can't experience that because it doesn't. Consciousness doesn't allow that type of experience. Therefore, we get the cut, we get the clipped bit. You faint, and then suddenly you're awake, and you don't remember. There's nothing in between. And yeah, people in comas come out of coma have actually talked about things that they claim to have remembered. And one thing has been studies to help them come out of coma is people are sat by a hospital bed talking to these people, particularly close friends or family, have an effect. And they come out of the coma having a claim of, you spoke to me, you said this, you said that. But the whole timeline is completely gone. You know, the experience of is very much, again, as if they shut their eyes and then opened them, with some in between. But that would be amazing, though, wouldn't it? That would be some, should be no doubt some science fiction writer has written something out there that, right, this person plugs itself into a system, consciousness is uploaded to something that beams their information, contents of the mind, brain, and everything to a new system, and then they're aware on this new system that they're in on Mars. You know, that's how it feels, though, isn't it? I mean, certainly how it feels to me is like the human body is, this thing is it's something that the consciousness is using, as if, this is the biological system is host to this, whatever it is, whatever we are, consciousness. What do you think? Put a comment below. I think it's a fascinating argument, and one that feels, there's no proof, it just feels very intuitive, that to me that experience is not consciousness. The experience is what happens to consciousness. It's like watching a film or whatever, having the whole experience play out. That's all the content. Without consciousness, there is no perceived content. With the content there, and without consciousness, then there's just you just got an artificial intelligence thing or something perhaps that isn't self-aware. I'm really trying to ram on that point, because I do feel like people confuse content of the mind with consciousness. How can it be? Because you are aware of those things, and you can look within your mind and play with those things. What's playing with it? Consciousness. You can rearrange thoughts and so on. Rearrange the Lego, right? Who's playing? Consciousness. What's the information? It's just the content. The content isn't creating the consciousness, but the consciousness plays with the content that is happening to the consciousness, as the consciousness then experiences and decides in a little bit of what they're going to do with it, but it's also the decision is influenced by the content there already as well. Is influenced, but not isn't is it, but is influenced by it. Probably butchered the whole explanation, really, because it's very difficult to explain. It's still got to get it sorted tomorrow. It's nearly impossible for something to explain that clearly, and it is a very circular thing, round and round, as you could hear. It's like I've been repeating myself. Well, did I deliver it in a good way or not? Put a comment below and just tell me. Tell me if I've butchered this, and comment like, what the fuck am I talking about? If you feel that way, or if you like it, whichever. Just you do you, and it is something I'm interested in, and I'd like to get more feedback on this channel. I did want to do another video today for the other channel. I keep talking about that, but I can't concentrate really properly. Consciousness, because this toothache is intermittent. I need the hole to have pulled out. Right, that's going to be fun. Wish me luck on that. It would be fine, you know. We got professions to deal with this. It's just not very nice, you know, to experience. Thanks. Bye. See ya, and I'll look forward to doing another video soon. Cheers.